There is a story we have all been told about the body. It goes like this. You are born with a certain quantity of vitality, a certain reserve of strength and clarity and physical resilience, and from the moment of your birth, you begin spending it. Each decade draws down the account a little further. Each year adds its increment of wear to the machinery. Each morning you wake up, you are, by the inexorable arithmetic of biology, slightly less than you were the morning before. And the destination of this story is fixed. The trajectory is set. The body, being a machine, must do what machines do when they have been running long enough. It must wear out. This story is told to us by our culture, by our medicine, by the well-meaning people around us who watch us age and nod with the quiet authority of people who consider themselves realists. It is reinforced by the mirror and by the birthday and by the thousand small indignities that the aging body presents to the aging mind as evidence that the story is true. And most of us, by the time we reach the middle chapters of life, have accepted this story so completely, have woven it so thoroughly into the fabric of how we understand ourselves, that the very suggestion of an alternative sounds not merely optimistic, but faintly ridiculous. Bodies wear out. That is what they do. Everyone knows this. I am here today to tell you that everyone is wrong. Not about the biology. The cells do change with time. The processes of the body do shift as the decades pass. I am not standing before you to deny the reality of physical experience or to promise you that these teachings will make you 25 again. I am here to tell you something far more important than that. I am here to tell you that the body is not a machine. It is a garment. And the condition of a garment is always, without exception, a reflection of the pattern from which it was made. This is the teaching that Neville Goddard returned to again and again throughout his life, with a consistency that amounted to insistence, because he understood that it represented not merely a spiritual idea, but a biological fact that the consciousness of his era was only beginning to approach from the scientific direction. The body, Neville taught, is the outward expression of an inward assumption. It is the physical garment woven by the subconscious mind from the raw material of your dominant beliefs about yourself, your habitual feelings about your own condition, your daily, hourly, moment by moment inner conversation about the state of the self that inhabits it. If the pattern held in the subconscious mind is a pattern of vitality, of strength, of the felt sense of a body that is alive and capable and renewed, the garment will reflect that pattern. And if the pattern held in the subconscious mind is a pattern of decline, of wear, of the accumulated resignation of a person who has accepted the story of the wearing out machine as the definitive truth of their physical existence, the garment will reflect that pattern too, with exactly the same fidelity, with exactly the same precision, with exactly the same biological obedience that makes this not a poetic metaphor, but a description of how the body actually works at the level of its deepest chemistry. Let me make this concrete. The subconscious mind governs every involuntary process in the human body. Every one. The rate at which your cells regenerate, The efficiency with which your immune system identifies and responds to threat, the balance of hormones that determines your energy levels, your mood, your sleep quality, your capacity for physical recovery. The inflammation responses that either protect the body or, when chronically activated by the stress chemistry of a mind that believes it is under siege, begin to damage the very tissues they were designed to defend. All of this is governed by the subconscious mind. All of it is responsive to the signals the subconscious mind receives from the dominant emotional states and the habitual inner conversation of the conscious mind above it. And what is the most common dominant emotional state of a person who has accepted the story of the wearing out machine? Resignation. The quiet, daily, deeply felt resignation of someone who wakes each morning expecting to feel a little worse than the morning before, who interprets every ache and every limitation as confirmation of a trajectory that only goes one direction, who has made peace, as they call it, with the idea that the best of their physical life is behind them and what remains is a managed decline toward an inevitable conclusion. That resignation is not neutral. It is not a passive acceptance of facts. It is a creative instruction issued to the most obedient biological system in existence, telling it, in the language it understands most completely, the language of feeling, exactly what to produce. And the body, faithful servant that it is, produces it. More resignation. More confirmation of the decline. More biological evidence that the story of the wearing out machine is true. This is not a conspiracy against you. It is not the universe being unkind. It is the law operating with its characteristic impersonal precision, giving you exactly what your dominant inner state is asking for. The question, the urgent and entirely practical question that I want to spend our time together today exploring is this. What happens when you change the inner state? What happens when the dominant feeling that the subconscious mind receives, not occasionally but habitually, not as a performance but as a genuine, embodied, physically real sensation, is not resignation but vitality? Not the desperate hope of vitality. Not the anxious wishing for vitality. The actual, located, physically present feeling of a body that is strong, that is clear, that is alive in the full sense of the word, that moves through the world with the ease and the energy of a self that has not accepted the story of the wearing out machine because it knows at the level of its deepest biology that the story is simply not true? The answer, and I want you to receive this not as encouragement but as the statement of a law, is that the body changes. Not as a miracle. Not as an exception to biology. As the natural, expected, entirely predictable consequence of a changed inner state expressing itself through the most responsive physical system in nature. The garment reflects the pattern. Change the pattern, and the garment must change with it. Not immediately, not all at once, not in ways that defy the pace of biological process, but with a consistency and a directionality that is, for the person who has committed to the inner work, unmistakable. I want to talk about the I am. Because there is no more direct, no more immediate, no more biologically consequential expression of the inner pattern than the words that follow those two syllables in your habitual daily speech. Neville Goddard taught that I am is not merely a grammatical construction. It is the name of the creative power within you. The declaration that activates the subconscious mind's creative function with a directness and an authority that no other combination of words can match. When you say, I am, you are not making an observation. You are issuing a decree. You are speaking to the most powerful creative intelligence in your experience, the subconscious mind that governs your biology and builds your outer world from your inner states, and you are telling it, with the full authority of your conscious awareness, what to produce. I am tired. I am getting old. I am not as strong as I used to be. I am falling apart. These are not complaints. They are not the harmless venting of a person having a difficult day. They are creative decrees, spoken in the language the subconscious mind takes most seriously, instructing the most responsive biological system in nature to produce exactly what has been declared. And the body, which does not evaluate the wisdom of the instruction or consider whether the person issuing it would benefit from a different outcome, simply obeys. More tiredness. More of the felt sense of aging. More of the biological expression of weakness and decline. Because that is what was asked for. Not in intention, in feeling. And feeling, as we have already established, is the language the subconscious mind speaks, and the seed it grows without question or condition. Now consider the alternative. I am strong. I am vital. I am renewed. I am alive in every cell of this body. I am the expression of a vitality that has no age and no ceiling and no trajectory but upward. Not spoken as affirmations recited without feeling, not performed with the brittle brightness of someone who does not quite believe what they are saying, but hopes that repetition will eventually produce conviction. Spoken from the inside of the feeling. From the embodied, physically located, genuinely inhabited sensation of a body that is strong and clear and alive. That is the I am that changes the biology. That is the pattern that the garment must reflect. That is the instruction to the subconscious mind that sets in motion the extraordinary, invisible, entirely natural process of the body reorganizing itself around a new assumption about its own condition. This is not wishful thinking. This is the precise mechanism by which the most documented cases of unexpected physical renewal have occurred throughout human history, in every culture, in every tradition, in every era in which a human being has discovered, usually through desperation and occasionally through grace, that the body follows the mind with a fidelity that the conventional story of the wearing-out machine has never been able to explain. I want to tell you about Arthur. Arthur was 75 years old when his story, the part of it that concerns us today, began. He was, by the standards of his age and his circumstances, in a condition that the people around him had quietly and kindly accepted as terminal in the functional sense. Not dying, not immediately, but finished in the sense that mattered most to a man who had spent his life in motion. He was bedridden. Had been for the better part of 8 months. The specific combination of physical conditions that had brought him to that bed is less important than the quality of the life it had produced, which was a life of 4 walls and a ceiling, and the particular psychological weight of a man who was accustomed to the outdoors, to movement, to the physical engagement with the world that had defined him for 7.5 decades, now confined to a space he could cross in 4 steps on his best days and could not cross at all on his worst ones. His doctors were not unkind. They were honest in the way that honest doctors are honest with elderly patients in conditions like Arthur's. They spoke of management rather than recovery, of comfort rather than restoration, of making the best of what remained rather than expecting what had been lost to return. Arthur listened to them with the respect they deserved and the private, quiet, entirely unspoken conviction that they were describing someone else's future. He had found Neville Goddard's work through his granddaughter, who had pressed a recording into his hands with the particular urgency of a young person who has discovered something they believe in and wants the person they love most to have it. Arthur had listened with the careful, somewhat skeptical attention of a man who has lived long enough to have encountered many beautiful ideas that turned out to be less useful in practice than they were in theory. And he had found, in Neville's teaching about the state akin to sleep and the creative power of the felt imagination, something that struck him not as beautiful theory, but as a precise description of something he could actually do. Something he could do tonight. In the bed he could not leave. With the body he could no longer trust. In the 4-walled world that had become the entirety of his physical experience, he could feel something different. And that night, in the specific quality of drowsy consciousness that Neville called the state akin to sleep, Arthur began to walk. Not with his body. With his imagination, inhabited so completely, so specifically, so physically, that the distinction between the two began to matter less than he had assumed it would. He walked on a beach. A specific beach, one he had known and loved for decades, on the Northern California coast where the sand is dark and the air has a particular quality of cold clarity that Arthur had always found more restorative than any medicine he had ever taken. He felt the sand under his feet, the specific, familiar resistance of it, firm enough to walk on, soft enough to feel beneath the soles with every step. He felt the cold air on his face, the way it moves differently at the coast than anywhere else, carrying the smell of salt and the particular aliveness of a wind that has traveled a great distance across open water to reach you. He felt his legs moving, strong, certain. The legs of a man who walks briskly not because he is in a hurry, but because his body enjoys the movement, because the muscles are glad to be used, because the physical act of striding forward on a beach he loves is one of the purest pleasures available to a human being, and his body knows it and responds to it with the wholehearted, uncomplicated enthusiasm of a self that is well. He did this every night. in the state akin to sleep. For as long as the feeling lasted before genuine sleep claimed him. And in our next block, I am going to tell you what happened to Arthur over the weeks and months that followed. I am going to give you the full account of what the body does when the pattern changes, when the garment is given a new design to follow, when the subconscious mind receives, night after night, in the most receptive state available to it, the feeling of a self that is strong and moving and alive. But before we go there, I want to leave you with one thought to carry into the interval. Arthur did not believe his way to the beach. He felt his way there. The distinction is everything. And by the time we are finished today, you will understand it so completely and so practically that you will be able to find your own beach, your own specific, sensory, physically real imaginal landscape of a self that is vital and strong and renewed, and you will know exactly how to walk there every night in the 5 minutes before sleep. The body is not a machine that must wear out. It is a garment that reflects the pattern of the soul. And tonight, we begin to change the pattern. Arthur had been an outdoor man his entire life. Not in the recreational sense, not the weekend hiker or the occasional camper, but in the deeper sense of a person for whom the physical world, its textures and its weather and its particular demands on the body, had always been the primary language of living. He had worked with his hands for 40 years, had built things, repaired things, understood intuitively the relationship between effort applied and result produced that comes only from a lifetime of physical engagement with the material world. Had gardened with the serious attention of someone who considers growing things not a hobby but a practice. Had walked every morning for as long as he could remember, not as exercise in the modern sense, but as a form of thinking, of settling the mind, of beginning the day in right relationship with the body that carried him through it. And then the body had stopped cooperating. The specific sequence of events that led to the 8 months in bed was, as these things usually are, a combination of the acute and the cumulative. A fall that produced injuries more serious than they initially appeared. A recovery that stalled. A series of secondary complications that the doctors managed with competence and that Arthur endured with the particular stoicism of a man who had never in his life complained about physical difficulty and was not about to begin. But stoicism, as Arthur was discovering, is not the same as acceptance. He was not at peace with the bed. E is less than has hon. 2 hash is greater than he, was not reconciled to the 4 walls. He was not, despite the careful management of his doctors and the devoted attention of his family, anywhere close to making his peace with a life that had been reduced in the space of less than a year. From the full physical engagement that had defined him to the narrow, horizontal, profoundly limited existence of a man who needed help to do the things he had done without thought for 7 decades. What he was, beneath the stoicism and the patience and the careful cooperativeness with everyone who was trying to help him, was quietly furious. Not at anyone. At the situation. At the body that had, in his private understanding of it, betrayed the man inside it. At the gap between who he knew himself to be and what the physical evidence of his daily existence was insisting he had become. This fury, I want to note, was not a problem to be solved. It was the signal that something in Arthur had not accepted the story of the wearing-out machine. That some part of him, the deepest part, the part that Neville Goddard would have recognized immediately as the I am that cannot be diminished by any physical circumstance, was refusing the diagnosis of finished. And it was that refusal, that quiet, furious, private refusal, that made Arthur the ideal student of what Neville taught about the body and the imagination and the law of divine vitality. He began the practice on a Tuesday evening in March. His granddaughter had explained a state akin to sleep to him in the practical, unsentimental way that young people sometimes explain things to the people they love, clearly and without the elaborate qualification that adults tend to add when they are afraid of sounding foolish. She told him to wait for the drowsy feeling, to let the mind soften but not fully surrender to sleep, and in that particular quality of in-between consciousness, to feel himself doing something he loved to do with his body. Feel it. She had been specific about that word. Not picture it. Not imagine it as a kind of waking daydream observed from the comfortable distance of a viewer watching a screen. Feel it. From the inside. With the full sensory reality of a body that is actually doing it. Arthur had chosen the beach without deliberation. It had presented itself immediately and completely when he asked himself where he most wanted to be, which told him something important about what the body and the soul consider home when they are allowed to choose without the interference of practicality. The Northern California coast. A specific stretch of it that he had visited every summer for 20 years with his late wife, whose name was Miriam, and whose presence in that landscape was so completely woven into his memory of it that to imagine the beach was always, in some dimension, to imagine her there too. The dark sand. The cold, clear air. The particular sound of the Pacific in that location, which is different from the sound of any other ocean in any other place, something Arthur had always known in his body without being able to articulate why. He found the state akin to sleep more easily than he expected. Perhaps because a man who has been bedridden for 8 months has spent more time in the territory between waking and sleeping than most people ever do, and has developed, without knowing it, a certain familiarity with its particular quality of consciousness. And in that state, on that Tuesday evening in March, Arthur walked onto the beach. He felt his feet on the sand first. This was instinctive rather than planned, the body's intelligence choosing the most grounding, most real, most physically unmistakable sensation available as its first point of contact with the imagined landscape. The resistance of the sand. Firm and dark and slightly damp from the receding tide, the way that particular beach always felt in the late afternoon when the light was going golden and the air was sharpening toward the coolness of the coastal evening. He felt his legs beneath him. This was the moment he had wondered about in the planning of the practice, the moment he had approached with the most uncertainty, because his legs in the physical world of the bed were the most obvious and most daily evidence of the gap between the man he knew himself to be and the condition the body had imposed upon him. But in the state akin to sleep, with the critical mind loosened and the gate open and the subconscious receptive to whatever was given, his legs did not feel like the legs of a man in a bed. They felt like the legs of a man walking briskly on a beach he loved. Strong, certain beneath him, moving with the easy, unself-conscious confidence of a body that does not think about walking, because walking is simply what it does, as naturally and as automatically as breathing. He felt his arms moving with a stride. The particular coordination of arms and legs in purposeful walking that the body learns so early it forgets it ever had to learn it. The slight forward lean of a man who is going somewhere with the quiet pleasure of someone who knows the destination is good. He felt the cold air on his face. This was the feeling that broke something open in him on that first night. Not in a painful way. In the way that something opens when it has been closed too long and the opening is relief rather than rupture. The cold, clear, salt carrying coastal air on his face, moving against his skin with the particular aliveness of a wind that has crossed an ocean to reach him, finding the creases around his eyes the way wind always does on a beach, and carrying with it the smell that Arthur had loved since childhood without ever being able to fully describe it. The smell of the edge of the world, of open water and wet rock, and the particular mineral clarity of air that has not passed through a city or a building or any human construction before it reaches you. He walked for what felt like a long time on that first night. He could not have said how long in clock terms, because in the state akin to sleep, the relationship with clock time loosens in a way that Arthur found, unexpectedly, to be one of the most restorative aspects of the practice. Time on the beach had always moved differently than time anywhere else. More generously, with less of the pressured forward momentum that time in the ordinary world carries with it. And in the imagined beach, in the state akin to sleep, it moved most generously of all. He carried the feeling into sleep. The specific, located, physically real feeling of his feet on the dark sand and the cold air on his face and his legs moving with the certain ease of a body that is strong and well and entirely at home in the world it inhabits. He woke the next morning and his physical condition was unchanged. I want to be honest about this because the story of what happened to Arthur is not a story of overnight transformation, and I will not present it as one. The body changes at the pace of biology, not at the pace of wish, and the first morning after the first practice was, in terms of what the senses could observe, identical to the morning before it. But something else was different. Arthur was different. Not in his physical capacity, not yet, but in the quality of his inner state upon waking. The particular weight of resignation that had been the first sensation of his mornings for 8 months, the gray, settled heaviness of a man who wakes each day into the confirmation of a condition he has not accepted but cannot change, was fractionally lighter. Fractionally. He was clear-eyed enough to not overstate it. It was not the dramatic lifting of a burden. It was the almost imperceptible suggestion of a loosening. Like the first morning after the longest part of winter, when the light has not yet changed in any way you could measure, but something in the body knows, with a certainty that precedes all evidence, that the direction has shifted. He practiced again that night, and the night after that, and the night after that. In the second week, something happened during the practice that Arthur had not anticipated, and that he would later describe as the moment he stopped being a skeptic and became a believer. He was on the beach, in the state akin to sleep, feeling the familiar combination of sand and air and the movement of his legs, when he became aware of something new in the feeling. His hands. He had not been paying particular attention to his hands in the practice. They were simply part of the body that was walking, moving naturally with the stride as hands do. But on this particular night, in this particular depth of the state akin to sleep, he became aware of them with a specificity he had not previously experienced. The feeling of strength in them. Not the theoretical strength of a remembered younger self, but the present tense, physically immediate, undeniable sensation of hands that are capable, that could grip something if asked to grip it, that could do the work they had done for 40 years of building and repairing and gardening and all the 10,000 physical acts of a life lived in genuine engagement with the material world. He felt that strength in his hands, in the state akin to sleep, on a Tuesday night in the third week of March, and something in him that had been very quiet for 8 months said something without words that amounted to, "There you are. There you are." Not the body he had lost, the self that had always inhabited it, the I am that had never been bedridden, that could not be bedridden, that exists in a dimension of consciousness where physical limitation is a circumstance rather than a definition. He began to extend the practice. Not by planning to extend it, but because the beach had become a place he was genuinely going rather than a technique he was genuinely trying. He added details that arose naturally from the depth of the feeling rather than from the deliberate construction of his planning mind. The particular way the light fell on the water at the hour he walked, late afternoon moving toward evening, the gold of it lying flat on the Pacific surface with the specific generosity of coastal light in the late day. The sound of his own footsteps on the sand, which he had never consciously noticed in all the years of actually walking that beach, but which the imaginal body now offered to him with a precision that surprised and moved him. The sensation of his breath in the cold air, slightly visible, the way breath is visible in temperatures like that, a detail so small and so physical that its presence in the imagined experience felt like a confirmation of something he could not quite name. At the end of the 4th week, Arthur's daughter, who visited every day, noticed something she mentioned, first with the careful tentativeness of a person who does not want to raise hopes that might be disappointed. She said, "Dad, your color is different." Not a dramatic observation. Not the announcement of a medical breakthrough. A daughter noticing, with the particular attention of someone who loves a person and has been watching them carefully for a long time, that something in the quality of their physical presence had shifted. Arthur's color was different because Arthur's blood was moving differently. Because the subconscious mind having received for 4 weeks the consistent, genuine, deeply felt instruction of a body walking briskly on a beach, with strong legs and capable hands, and cold air on a face that was alive to the world, had begun, with the patient and extraordinary precision of a biological system responding to changed inner signals, to adjust its output accordingly. The chemistry was shifting incrementally in the direction of the pattern it was being given. In the 6th week, Arthur sat up in bed without assistance for the first time in 4 months. Not dramatically. Not as an announcement. He simply found himself doing it one morning before he had consciously decided to try, the way the body sometimes moves ahead of the mind when the body has been quietly reorganizing itself around a new assumption about its own capabilities. His daughter found him sitting up and did not say anything for a moment. And then she sat down on the edge of the bed and took his hand, and they stayed like that for a while, in the particular silence of 2 people who understand that something has changed without yet knowing exactly what it means or how far it means will go. By the end of the 3rd month, Arthur was standing at the window each morning for 15 minutes. By the end of the 4th month, he was walking, slowly and with assistance, to the garden that had been waiting for him outside the window of his 4-walled world for the better part of a year. By the end of the 6th month, he was walking in that garden unassisted every morning for 20 minutes. That became 30 and then 40 as the weeks passed and the body continued its quiet, methodical, entirely natural process of reorganizing itself around the pattern it had been given. His doctors were careful in their language, as good doctors are careful, neither dismissing what they were observing nor making claims they could not substantiate with the tools available to them. They used words like unexpected and remarkable, and the particular phrase that doctors use when biology produces results that their models do not fully account for. They said, "We are not entirely sure what has happened here." Arthur did not explain it to them. Not because he was secretive, but because he understood, with the practical wisdom of a man who has spent his life working with materials that do not care about theories, that the explanation was beside the point. The point was the beach. The sand and the cold air and the strong legs and the capable hands and the feeling inhabited every night in the state akin to sleep of a self that was vital and moving and entirely at home in the world it inhabited. The point was the pattern. Changed in the only place where patterns can be changed. In the subconscious mind. In the inner world that the outer world has never done anything but reflect. The garment had been given a new design to follow. And the garment, faithful to its nature, had followed it, is less than Hasone. 5# is greater than. Now, I want to give you something to carry into tonight. Not the full practice, we will go into that completely in our closing block. But one question to sit with as we move from Arthur's story into your own. If you were going to find your beach, your specific, sensory, physically beloved landscape of a self that is strong and clear and vital, what would it be? Not a general idea of wellness. A specific place. A specific feeling in a specific body doing a specific thing it loves to do. the thing your body most misses. The movement, or the sensation, or the physical engagement with the world that, when you bring it to mind, produces even the faintest, genuine warmth in the chest. The flicker of recognition that says, yes, that. That is what this body knows itself to be when it is fully itself. Find that. Hold it lightly. Bring it with you into the final practice we are about to enter together. Because your beach is waiting. And tonight, in the state akin to sleep, you are going to walk on it. We have traveled a considerable distance together today. We have challenged, with the precision this challenge deserves, the story of the wearing out machine that our culture has handed us as though it were a fact of nature rather than a belief we have inherited and accepted and enacted into biology through the extraordinary obedience of the subconscious mind. We have understood, at the level where understanding becomes usable rather than merely interesting, that the body is not a machine but a garment, and that the condition of a garment is always the reflection of the pattern from which it was made. We have sat with Arthur and watched what happens when a 75-year-old man in a bed he cannot leave decides, quietly and without announcement, to change the pattern. To give the subconscious mind a different instruction. To feel, every night, in the state akin to sleep, the specific physical reality of a self that is strong and moving and entirely at home in the world it inhabits. And we have understood that what happened to Arthur was not a miracle in the sense of an exception to natural law. It was a miracle in the sense of natural law, perfectly, impersonally, faithfully applied. Now I want to bring all of it into your body. Not as information you carry in the mind, as a feeling you carry in the cells, as a lived, embodied, physically real experience of the pattern you are choosing to give your subconscious mind from this day forward. This final practice has two parts. The first is what I call the inventory of vitality. And the second is the full guided immersion into the state akin to sleep, where we will find your beach and walk on it together in the imagination with the specific sensory precision that the subconscious mind requires in order to receive the new pattern as genuinely real. Let us begin with the inventory. I want you to bring your attention right now, fully and without distraction, into the body you are currently inhabiting. Not the body you wish you had. Not the body you remember from 20 years ago, or the body you are hoping to recover. This body, the one you are in right now. The one that is, in this moment, doing an extraordinary number of things simultaneously without your instruction or your supervision or your permission. Your heart is beating. Right now, as you receive these words, your heart is contracting and releasing with a precision and a reliability that no human engineering has ever come close to replicating. It has been doing this every moment of your life, without missing a single beat, without requiring your conscious attention, without asking for your gratitude or your acknowledgement. Simply doing what it does, because the intelligence that governs it knows its purpose and fulfills it without hesitation. Feel it now if you can. not dramatically. Simply the awareness of it. The quiet, steady, utterly reliable pulse of a heart that has been faithful to you for every year of your life. That faithfulness is vitality. That is the law of divine vitality expressing itself in the most intimate and most essential way available. Your lungs are breathing. Without your direction, without your effort, the bellows of your respiratory system are expanding and contracting, drawing in the oxygen that every cell of your body requires and releasing what is no longer needed, maintaining the precise chemical balance that makes conscious life possible. Take one breath now that is slightly deeper than the last. Not forced. Simply invited. Feel the expansion of the chest as the lungs receive the breath. Feel the particular quality of fullness at the top of the inhale, that moment when the body is maximally charged with what it needs. And feel the release of the exhale, the specific physical relief of a body letting go of what it no longer requires. That breath is vitality. That exchange is the law of divine vitality in its most continuous and most available expression. Your mind is receiving and processing these words. An organ of extraordinary complexity, one that the most advanced technology in human history has not yet succeeded in fully mapping or understanding, is translating vibrations in the air into meaning, is connecting that meaning to everything you already know and everything you have already felt, is producing in response a cascade of electrochemical activity so intricate and so swift that it makes the most sophisticated computer ever built look like a child's toy. And it is doing this effortlessly, naturally, without strain and without limit. That effortless processing is vitality. That is the law of divine vitality expressing itself through the organ of consciousness itself. I want you to sit with this inventory for a moment before we go further. Because one of the most powerful and most immediately available shifts in the inner pattern is the shift from the habitual inventory of what the body can no longer do to the honest, attentive, genuinely felt inventory of what it is doing right now, in this moment, with a faithfulness and a complexity and a biological intelligence that deserves not resignation, but reverence. The body you are in right now is not a worn-out machine. It is an extraordinarily sophisticated, magnificently complex, ceaselessly active expression of the same intelligence that turns seeds into forests and governs the movement of galaxies. It is doing, in this moment, 10,000 things simultaneously that you cannot do consciously and could not do manually, even if your life depended on it. It is alive. Fully, completely, right now, alive. And the instruction you give it, through the feeling you inhabit as your dominant inner state, will determine the direction in which that aliveness expresses itself in the weeks and months ahead. This is the moment to choose the direction. Now, I want to take you into the practice. Into the state akin to sleep, which we are going to approximate together right now, not in the full depth available at the actual threshold of sleep, but in a quality of relaxed, inward attention that will give you the felt experience of the technique, so that tonight, in the genuine hypnagogic state, you will know exactly where you are going and exactly what to feel when you get there. Let your body settle fully into whatever holds it. Let every point of contact between your body and the surface beneath you or behind you receive your full weight. Let there be nothing to hold up and nothing to maintain. Let the hands open. Let the fingers uncurl. Let the palms face upward in the gesture of a person who is ready to receive rather than to grip. Let the shoulders release. Not by pushing them down, that is effort, and effort is the opposite of the quality we are reaching for. Simply by withdrawing the unconscious instruction to hold them up. By allowing gravity to do what gravity does when the body stops resisting it. Close your eyes and take 3 breaths, each one slightly slower and slightly deeper than the last, that carry with them on the exhale the surface concerns of the day. Not all of it. Not the depth of your life. The surface. The transactions and the tasks and the small mechanical frictions of ordinary hours. Let those go with the breath, knowing they will be there when you return, patient and available, outside the door of this particular quality of inward attention. Good. Now, I want you to find your beach. Or your garden, if that is what arose when I asked the question earlier. Or your forest path, or the kitchen of a home you loved, or the specific room in which you have most completely felt yourself to be fully yourself. Whatever landscape your body and soul offered when asked where they most want to be. Let it arise now. Not constructed deliberately, not assembled piece by piece with the effortful attention of the planning mind. Simply allowed. The way a place you know well arises in memory, whole and immediate and specific when you give it permission to come. You are there now. Feel the ground beneath your feet first. Whatever the ground is in your particular landscape. The dark, firm sand of a coastal beach. The particular resistance of a garden path, stone or earth, or the soft give of grass that has grown thick and healthy over many years. The wooden floor of a beloved room, its specific solidity beneath the soles, the way it has always felt in that particular place. Feel it with the full attention of a body that is actually standing on it. Let the soles of your feet register it as physically present and real. Now, feel your legs beneath you. Strong. Certain. The legs of a self that stands without effort and moves without hesitation. Not the legs of a particular age or a particular decade. The legs of the self that is most essentially you, the I am that has no age and no ceiling and no trajectory but the one it chooses. Feel them support you. Feel the particular confidence of a body that trusts its own foundation. The quiet, unthought certainty of standing well on ground that holds you. Let that certainty move upward through the body now. Through the hips, which carry the weight of the torso with the easy competence of a structure that is sound, through the spine, which rises from that foundation with the natural, unforced dignity of a body that is aligned, that has its integrity, that knows its own uprightness without needing to think about it. Feel the strength in the spine. Not rigid strength. Alive strength. The strength of something that can move in every direction because its center is sound. Let it move into the chest now. Feel the chest open. Not the deliberate, performed opening of someone trying to appear confident. The natural, effortless opening of a body whose nervous system is not braced against anything, whose chemistry is not flooded with the signals of threat or resignation or the low chronic stress of a self that has accepted a diminished story about its own condition. The chest of a body that is simply, completely, at this moment well. Breathe from that openness now. Let the breath go all the way in to the bottom of the lungs, the way a breath goes in a body that has room for it, that is not contracted around an old wound or a chronic fear or the accumulated physical expression of decades of resignation. Feel the fullness of that breath. The specific physical, undeniable vitality of a body that is fully oxygenated, fully alive, fully present to the moment it is in. Now bring your attention to your hands. Feel the strength in them. The specific, located, physically real sensation of hands that are capable, that could grip, that could work, that could do the things they have always known how to do with the competence and the ease of a body that has not forgotten its own capabilities because the self that inhabits it has not accepted the story of their loss. Let the fingers feel that strength. Each one. The particular aliveness of hands that are well and capable and ready. And now, bring your attention to your eyes. Even closed, even in this inward state, feel the clarity in them. The specific quality of eyes that see well, that are sharp, that engage with the world around them with the interested, attentive, fully present gaze of a self that is curious about what is there to be seen. Feel the clarity as a physical sensation, a brightness behind the eyes, a quality of focus that belongs to a visual system that is doing its work fully and well. Now, in this landscape that is yours, with this body that is strong beneath you, and open in the chest, and clear in the eyes, and capable in the hands, begin to move. Not dramatically, naturally. The way you move in a place you love, with the easy, unself-consciousness of a body that is doing what it enjoys doing in a landscape that it knows and trusts. Feel the movement in the legs. The specific, physical, entirely real sensation of a stride that is confident and unforced and entirely your own. The particular rhythm of your own gait, not anyone else's, the specific way this particular body moves when it is well and at ease and going somewhere it wants to go. Feel the air on your face as you move. Whatever the air is in your particular landscape, cold and salt carrying like Arthur's coastal wind, or warm and garden-scented, or the specific quality of air in a beloved room when the windows are open and the season is right. Let it be on your face now, physically present, real in the way that only the specific and the sensory can be real to the subconscious mind that is receiving this as its instruction. Stay in this for a moment. Let the body of vitality be your body, not a body you are imagining from the outside. The body you are inside of right now, in this landscape, moving with this ease, breathing with this depth, seeing with this clarity, standing on this ground with these strong and certain legs. This is the I am of vitality. This is the pattern the subconscious mind is receiving right now in this quality of inward attention as its instruction for what to produce in the biology of your waking life. Let it be as real as it genuinely wants to be, without forcing and without measuring, without the pressure of getting it exactly right or feeling it perfectly or producing a result that will impress the critical mind with its vividness. Simply with the honest, quiet, genuine feeling of a self that is strong and clear and alive. Plant that tonight. In the actual state akin to sleep, in the drowsy threshold where the guard is down and the gate is open and the seed passes directly into the soil that will grow it. Plant it with whatever feeling is genuinely available to you in that particular evening's particular depth of the state. Some nights it will be vivid and full, and you will carry it into sleep with the sense of something powerfully planted. Other nights it will be thin, and the doubt will be present, and the critical mind will offer its familiar objections about the gap between the feeling in the imagination and the condition of the body in the bed. On those nights, do what Arthur did on his thin nights. Find the smallest genuine feeling available, the faintest sensation of the ground beneath the feet, the most tentative suggestion of air on the face, the quietest possible echo of legs that are moving with some quality of ease. Plant that, because the soil does not require a perfect seed. It requires a real one. And real means felt, however slightly, from the inside of the vital self rather than from the outside of the diminished story. Do this every night. With the patient consistency of a gardener who has understood something fundamental about the relationship between what is planted and what grows. Who does not dig up the root to check whether it is growing because they know, with the calm certainty of someone who understands the law, that what is genuinely planted always grows. Always. Without exception. Without age limit. Without a statute of limitations that says this body has been carrying this pattern too long for a new one to take hold. The subconscious mind does not know your age. It does not consult your medical history before deciding whether to grow the seed you have planted. It does not weigh the decades of the old pattern against the probability of the new one producing results in the time remaining. It receives the seed and grows it, as it has always done, as it did for Arthur in the four-walled world of a bed he could not leave, as it will do for you in whatever landscape of limitation or diminishment or quiet resignation you have been inhabiting, if you will give it the same consistent, genuine, specifically felt instruction that Arthur gave it every night for 6 months on the dark sand of a Northern California beach, with cold air on his face and strong legs beneath him, and the particular aliveness of a self that had refused, with a quiet fury that turned out to be the most creative force available to him, to accept the story of the wearing out machine as the final word on what his body was capable of becoming. The body is not a machine that must wear out. It is a garment that reflects the pattern of the soul. And the soul, your soul, the I am, that cannot be diminished by any circumstance and has no age and no ceiling and no trajectory but the one it chooses, is choosing a new pattern tonight. Strong, clear, vital, alive in every cell with the same intelligence that has been faithful to you every moment of your life, without asking for your gratitude or your acknowledgement. Simply doing what it does, because that is its nature. And its nature is abundance, is renewal, is the ceaseless, patient, entirely reliable expression of a vitality that has no age, because it belongs not to the body, but to the consciousness that wears it. Go well tonight, my friend. Go gently. And go into sleep carrying the feeling of the beach, the sand and the cold air, and the strong legs, and the capable hands, and the clear eyes of a self that is in the only dimension where patterns are made, and bodies are instructed, and garments are given their design. Fully, completely, unreservedly, alive,